Welcome to Wonderful Women podcast. I do hope that everyone's listening and that you share this far and wide, and be wonderful and press subscribe. Today, I am so absolutely honoured and delighted to have the wonderful Darrell Sutherland with me. Darrell is the most extraordinary woman and coach and catalyser of consciousness. How wonderful is that? I have known Darren for about 2.5, maybe 3 years now. She was my coach way back when I was a boutique owner, and she was the catalyser of my online business. If it wasn't for Darrell, I don't know what I would be doing now. She absolutely takes and finds the best in you and helps you realize what you can do and where you can go, and gives you a belief in yourself that I don't think I know anyone else could do. So, I thank you and honor you for that forever, Darrell, and I will work with you forever. I recently completed, well, you never complete your work, Darrell, it's ongoing, your Supreme offering, and it's amazing. And I every second day I go in and out of there to go, and I very often think, what would Darrell do? So, Darrell, thank you so much for being with me today. And, is there anything you would like to add to that intro?
Just to say thank you so much for having me here today. I've got shivers all over my body, just in appreciation, not just for your words, but for you, wonderful women. Because, it takes two. It takes all of the energy, the beauty that we brought together in our relationship and continue to bring together. It really takes that openness, that trust, that receptivity, for the magic to really happen. So I'm so, so grateful. I learn as much from my clients, from you, as hopefully I'm able to share. So I just want to say thank you so much for having me here today. I was sharing before we started, I was sharing with Susan that I just woke up with just flutters of such excitement for this conversation today. And yeah, I'm just really excited for the magic to unfold.
Well, so am I. And I can't wait to hear your answer to this season's question, which is, can you share with us a time or an event or a challenge in your life that changed the trajectory of your life?
I just love this so much because it speaks so deeply into the core of everything that I believe, which is that, our expansion is found in the journey. Our expansion is found in those moments, often in those moments that we don't understand, that can feel painful, that can feel like, when I call it the crumbling, it can feel really like things are at times coming from beneath us. They don't make sense. Yet out of this crumbling, if you will, opens up portals of magic. And the way that I was thinking about it last night when I was thinking about this conversation today is that it has each of these have the potential to open up new timelines for our life.
Yes.
You know? And that was really, I think, that just the essence of the excitement was really getting to reflect on these almost, your audience might, resonate with the term sliding doors, like these moments where you just decide to step through and, you get to the other side and my goodness, you think, you almost want to kiss yourself. you had the courage and the trust and the willingness to just, even when it felt blind, even when it didn't make sense, that you just had something within you, and of course that aspect is our higher soul, our higher self, but that you had enough within you to just trust that and make those sometimes baby steps that we make just to move through the door.
Oh, I'm tingling. I'm tingling back. My goodness, I hear you. And I've felt that. And it's just that step very often. And we can be so hesitant, you know, we'll dip our toe in and take it back and go, oh, my goodness. And when you take that step, it is so powerful. And then suddenly it all becomes clear, doesn't it?
Yes. And, you know, I think one of the sayings that I come back to often, and I think it was Steve Jobs that said it, you know, but we cannot join up the dots going forwards. It really is only when we look back and we just go, wow, like it really makes sense. And I think it's important for us to dwell on that and to reflect on that, which is why I'm so grateful for this conversation today and why I think it's so important and valuable to bring these kind of conversations to all of the women that will be touched, you know, by this podcast, this season. It's important for us to dwell on that because I think it builds one of the most important ingredients that we need to live a life of true meaning and expansion, of which courage, you know, is required. We need trust in ourselves. And so when we can look back and reflect on those moments where we just had enough of that trust, even if it was only the most minuscule amount, but we just listened to the whisper, we listened to the nudge, and we let ourselves move forward. When we reflect on that, it builds that energy. It builds that sense of, wow, you know, every other part of me was screaming, don't go, this doesn't make sense. And maybe even people around us who love us so much, who, you know, who want to keep us safe, or, you know, in many cases, arguably most cases, people are just looking out for, you know, and doing their best and looking out for you, wanting you to remain safe, and maybe saying, you know, don't do it, doesn't make sense. But you listen to that small part of yourself. And so I think that trust becomes a muscle that we grow, and the more that we grow it and have that fluidity of, you know, it comes in and we move out, and it comes in and we move out, which is something I really admire so much about you, Susan. That is something you really, really embody that to, like, I'm not sure that, like, at this point, the number of clients that I've worked with over the course of the last 2 years, and you are one of the people that stand out at the top of my mind in terms of that level of embodiment of just following that voice, following that bliss, following that knowing.
Well, you have, I mean, I think I've always put my faith in life and known that it will give me what I need, even in the darkest of times. It's like, no, put your faith in life. So I've always come from there. But we forget. We forget. And you are the one that absolutely instills that trust, reminds us. And my goodness, and it's working with that. It's just going, no, trust it. Trust it. Never mind logic. Never mind the logic. You know, because very often the logic, it's not logic. It's something that it's not even inside you. It's something that comes in and tries to keep you small and will stop you in your tracks. And it's like being bold and being, no, I am going to do this. And what the heck have we ever got to lose? That's what I think. Let's just go on.
Absolutely. And I think you're right about that as well. There's the helpful kind of logic that we can lean into, you know, science, we can lean into experiences, we can lean into people who have paved the path or who've been on journeys and things like that. There's helpful kind of logical things that can help us really accelerate the journey, but that feminine trust aspect has to come first. And I think that's the key. And I think we try to do it in reverse. We want to approach it from the logical mind, or even sometimes, as you said, the fear mind, and what we're doing is, in that circumstances, and I'll explain that when I will answer your question, or when I go on.
Okay, no, I'm loving this.
I'll explain that. But what we do is, when we don't embody the trust first, when we're not, embodied in that feminine aspect of ourselves first, we are searching for evidence. We're searching for experiences and evidence of, can I do this? Is it possible? I haven't done this before. And so that's the noise that we hear echoing and reverberating through our body, through our cells. And it just feels, if we listen and we stay there too long, it will feel impossible. It will feel like it's just safer to be here. What the feminine will do is, it will encourage you and entice you towards that expansion, towards the unknown, because that's where creation comes from. It comes from the darkness. It comes from the unknown.
Absolutely.
That's our evolution.
It does. And I love the enticement of the feminine. I've got to admit that throughout my life, I have veered towards the masculine within myself. It stood me in good stead in the corporate world. And I have had to consciously work on that, taking them together, doing meditations, allowing the feminine to nurture the masculine, and say it's okay. No, you're not bad. No, it's okay. I'm here and I can hold you too. My goodness, I had to work very hard on that too. Get past I'm going to go with my feminine. The masculine has its place, my goodness, within us. It is important, but I love the triggering of the feminine within to take me to places that are exciting.
Yeah, because she will ripple. She is that feeling in your body. She's that opening of your heart. She is that whisper. She is that guidance. And she is that feeling of internal knowing. Very often someone like you, people may look and think, it's just incredible what a brave life she leads. And all of these really remarkable choices that you've made in your life to lead yourself, and then not just to lead yourself, but to lead not just yourself and your family, but to lead others, to put yourself out there into the world and make these really big, bold choices. And they might think, wow, but it goes back to that inner sense of knowing when you're guided, there's a feeling in your body. And when you start to this, it goes back to that reflecting on that trust, but you get used to that feeling in your body. Even if it starts and it's just a little sound or a little feeling, you start to know that as your guidance system. You start to know and embody that trust that this is my guidance system, this is my compass. And when I lead from here and then, move into my masculine, allow myself to be supported and provided, etc., that's where the magic really happens. And until we truly make those moves, and often we have to go first to experience this kind of magic. We have to kind of leap when it doesn't make sense. But once you start to embody that frequency, connect with that sense of trust and feel that in your body, you always have a system from which to operate from. And I think that's really, really important.
I do agree. Oh, you just inspire me to speak. I could speak to you all day long. And it is beautiful. And on one hand, it's obvious. On the other hand, it is forgotten. We need to share this so far and wide and remind people to connect.
So true.
Women to connect, men to connect as well,
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody, especially in these mad times, because there's so much negativity and masculine energy out there right now that we need to bring this back in and to the forefront.
I agree.
Of everyone's lives. I've got tears now. I knew they would come today. So, Darrell,
the story, when I reflected, and I had a couple of choices, as you know, there's been a few big evolutions within my own life, but I picked this story because it probably created what feels like the biggest transition in my adult life. And the topic was around about, a time that provided, challenged or caused you a sense of challenge, but kind of opened up then, beautiful new experiences. And I was thinking about the original transition that I made. So for your listeners, I started off my journey as a nurse. And I was living in my purpose, loved my patients, loved the relationship with relatives, and just being of service every day, learning, growing, evolving. Like, I loved all of it. And really quickly, my enthusiasm and passion helped me, and I kind of moved up through different channels and ended up in in a senior position in the ward, and loved it. And actually, when I reflected on that, I couldn't have imagined, when I started out my career, I couldn't have even imagined that I would get to that place. Just to qualify and have gone to university and be doing this job, really, quite frankly, was a dream come true. That's how I felt. So here I was, still quite young, enjoying what I was doing in this senior role. And I remember one day, one of the senior managers coming into the office, and when I reflect back now, the reason as well, part of why I wanted to share this story, this has actually happened to me several times, but I believe when I look back now, those people they carried invitations. They were like almost earth angels, is how it might sound quite woo to maybe some of your listeners, but it really is how I think of those people now, because there was no pushing, there was no forcing. It just seemed to be an opportunity that presented itself. Now, this opportunity came in the form of a shift in my career. It really was a shift in my career, because it was taking me off the floor as a nurse, caring for patients and kind of leading a team, into corporate organizational transformation, much bigger, wider role. And I remember being so flattered by the invitation and thinking, this is a dream come true. And it was a lot of education. So as well as culture and leadership and psychology and a lot of the things that I was inherently good at, but also passionate about, it was a lot of education, which meant I could go out and embody more of my teacher, all of those things. So I remembered feeling really excited. And it was really an invitation to come and apply. And I remembered opening up the job description. So it went from this really beautiful conversation, which immediately felt like a yes in my body, to reading this very masculine, contracted, like, this will be your roles and responsibilities, this is the experience you should have, this, and just going into this absolute contraction and feeling like, this isn't possible for me, I cannot do this, this doesn't make sense. And really just this back and forth energy. And, at that time I had so much going on as well in my personal life. And I remembered that part of me, we spoke about that little voice of trust. I remembered that part of me, that whisper that just said, but you had this passion for this step, you wanted to do this, why not just apply? It was a bit like what you said, what have you got to lose? And I think that was the underlying energy of like, well, you could go and apply. You could just see how it goes. So for me, communication, interviews, all of those things came effortlessly for me most of my life. It wasn't a big deal. It was something that felt really, good for me. Well, I went into this interview, and to say I bombed was an understatement. I couldn't find my words. I couldn't find my words. Everything just, it just didn't work. It wasn't, it went the opposite of how I would have liked it to go. And I took myself off home. I went under my covers and I cried. I cried. I thought, what it really was this just, and this was the crumbling, that I was talking about, this idea that like, I've embarrassed myself. I shouldn't have done this. Who was I to think that this was possible for me? Susan, so much of this energy, but I think the underlying theme was, I'm going to be laughed at. I've really embarrassed myself. I should have just stayed in my lane. How often do we hear this in life?
Oh, I know. It's ridiculous.
I should have just stayed in my lane. all of these feelings and emotions which were coming from me. I went to my bed. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. I came home. My husband, or he was my partner at the time, he was working offshore, so he was in the house through the day. I said, don't talk to me, I'm going to my bed, put my covers over my head, and I just thought I have to just let these feelings come and just let them wash away, and just, I'll just go back to my job. And I loved it anyway, so it'll all be okay. Anyway, I got a phone call from the woman to share that, we really loved your authenticity. That's what she said. We really loved your authenticity. We really loved that when you didn't have the answers, instead of trying to pretend that you had the answers, you just sort of, you just shared, I'm not sure, I'm not able to answer that question, which to me felt like, the worst thing ever. Not being able to answer the question. And long story short, they gave me the job. And that portal, that time in my life, that transition of, moving from being on the ward in this, this energy of caring for my patients, into this energy of leadership, into this energy of responsibility, also into this energy of potential. Because what I started to see really quickly when I came into this world was, oh my gosh, there's so many places I could go. There's so many avenues. It was just like so much opened up for me. And in that work and in the leadership work that I was doing, I found people like, and you will know and also love, Brene Brown.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love her.
Yeah, I found myself falling into, because of course, I was looking to inspire others, to influence others, to do brave things in my work. And so I looked into the world to like, who else is living in this way? What I saw in the organization, much like we see in the world, was a lot of toxic culture, a lot of, just things that I believe this could be so much better. This could be so much better.
And you were put there, I believe, to make things better in the Darrell way, in the Darrell reading Brené Brown way, in the Darrell waking up and being enlightened way. And isn't that beautiful that they recognize that in you? I've had that in my lifetime. Ended up in jobs that I had or positions, or part of my career being, not logical. I shouldn't have been in, I headed up the marketeers floor for B Sky B, and I've got no knowledge of marketing, but I did have knowledge of people. And all I had was actually 4 direct reports. So you were the right person for them. Thank God that they saw that in you.
Yeah, well, I believe that. I really believe that as well. I really believe it was divinely orchestrated. And when I think back to, those people who came in and said, would you like to apply? In my mind, there were so many other people that would be so much better, academically qualified and all of those things for this position. But like I said, it felt like this earth angel, this opportunity. And I'll go on to explain, like, it really shifted the entire timeline of my life. It took me into an entirely new timeline of my life. Because like I said, I fell into, just in an attempt to look at the way things were being done, which was in this very masculine, in my, opinion, at times there was a lot of toxicity and nothing that people can't read about. And I just knew there was another way. And so I went in, Susan, and I started to do things really differently. And my job was really to get people on board with, providing better care. And this was, I'd essentially pilot areas that I was working with, and then scaling up this work then across, first of all, NHS Highland, but then nationally. This work would go nationally all over Scotland. Amazing. So I just thought, this doesn't work. People are not resonating with this. And, I'll draw parallels to this and business and where I've ended up. But I really understood that the science and the methodologies that I was taught to go out and teach and promote, which were important, was missing this feminine element. So I would go into the wards and I would stop teaching the methodology and I would start telling stories. And I would tell stories about the patients, and I would tell stories about things that had happened, and I would tell stories about my granny and things that had happened through her care timelines, and, you know, after having a fall. And I would just tell them stories, and I would open up conversations about culture and what, you know, what really mattered to them, where the problems were, where the bottlenecks were for them, what their vision and ideal, you know, would be, and how they want to feel when they come to work. And I remembered vividly one day, one of the lead nurses that I was working with, and there'd been an incident, and usually where it would be very tense and looking for who to blame. And, you know, he'd explained to me, like, this is what had gone on. And he went out into the ward in front of all of his staff and shared, this is the incident that happened, and I want to talk about my part in that. And what he did that day was vulnerability. And I remembered the ripple effects it started to have and how things in the culture, you know, would shift and change. And this area became the golden area of transformation. And people were saying, how has this happened? They're like the leading area. They're the leading ward for all of this profound transformation. And this is one of the moments I remember where we were sitting at the senior leadership team, you know, so this would be chief executives, board directors, all of these people that would have to go in and out of meetings and talk to. And, you know, people wanting to talk about, yes, and this methodology has worked. And I remember one of them saying, I'm really interested to hear from Darrell. What do you really, like this, what do you really, because we've been working at this for years. So what do you really think is creating this? And I started to talk about belief. It was the first time in a boardroom I started to talk about belief and the culture. And, you know, I remember, I think my boss just wanted to really kick me under the table, put a blanket over my head to get me to stop talking. But it was really...
How dare you talk about belief in the NHS? Well
absolutely.
done. Oh, sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, not at all. That's that, you know, and so I just recognized all of that magic, you know, everything that had been created. And I recognized that this was happening from the inside out. I got to a stage where, as good as the work is and lots of opportunities kind of opened up for me in that role, it was a bridge. That's what that role was. It was really a bridge for me, because I had had the call in for a long time. I talk about this when we are really looking to move towards something new, when we're looking to create a new way of living, a new way of being. Opportunities will open up for us if we are prepared to have that trust and continue to believe, continue to follow the steps, continue to be of service, to continue to remain in alignment. The path will open up. And, you know, for me, what I learned from a personal standpoint through that role was how much masculine energy I was living in. I could see the magic of this feminine in what I was doing, but I was continuing to live in this very exhausting masculine way, which, you know, was lots of doing, long hours, sacrificing myself, sacrificing my family. And, you know, I remembered one night coming home, lying in my bed, and having this, and I talk about this as like a crack in my consciousness of, you know, this voice almost saying to me, who are you?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Oh.
Why are you doing what you're doing? You're out of integrity. And I knew that to be true. I knew that to be true. And while on the outside everything was looking great, I knew that on an inner level, I was out of integrity with the things that mattered most to me, my relationships, my daughter, most importantly. I felt so out of alignment, just not having the time and energy. And, you know, I just felt like I had things in the wrong order, but I didn't necessarily know what the right order was, you know? And so I made a commitment from that to just put what I had been learning, what I'd been reading about in my books and learning from people like Brene Brown, Carolyn Mace, all of these, Michael Singer, Neil Donald Walsh, all of these beautiful mentors that I had been learning from, Wayne Dyer, and starting to put some of that into action in my own life. And it wasn't long before I just knew, I decided I have to leave this world. I have to leave this world. And I don't know how it's going to happen yet, this corporate world. Yeah. I don't know how that's going to happen yet, but I know I want to start a business. I know that I want to take all of what I've been doing for myself and this magic that I've been learning about and, bring it into the world in some way. And I remembered saying to my husband, as, my boss all of a sudden left and I was getting opportunities to, things like, oh, we've come across a new way of scaling this work that you're doing, Darrell, through webinars and, launching this through webinars and education.
Oh.
Oh, absolutely. It felt like, I remember saying to my husband, the Red Sea is parting, and every day that I'm waking up, it's taking me further and further into the life that I know I'm going to be living. And one day I went into work and I'd sat in a meeting, listened to this really toxic conversation, and I remembered having this idea, this feeling that my soul literally wants to fly out the window. And I walked out of that room after listening to one of the people in the room. I walked out of the room, I phoned my husband and I said, I quit.
Wow.
I quit.
Well done.
I didn't know what was going to be in front of me. What was, what thing, I didn't know how things were going to turn out. I had no alternative sources of income at that time. A joint business that I was in, which was certainly nowhere near, income producing. I really had no idea what it was going to look like at that time, but I knew I have to go. And that was my leap of trust moment.
Absolutely. You flew through the sliding doors that day.
Yeah.
How did you feel?
Surprisingly calm. In a sort of way that I really didn't feel I had any other choice. And I know that sounds funny because of course I did have a choice. I could have stayed, but it was almost like the soul part of me, which I believe is what I had been cultivating in this bridge period, like through this work that I had been doing. I had started to cultivate and attune to more of that inner aspect of myself. I was learning to listen to the voice. I was watching what I could produce and create when I was operating more from that energy.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got to that point, I feel like, I felt calm. I felt like it's just going to be okay because that's the only option.
Yeah, absolutely. And listening, and also, if we go back to the you being asked, what are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you going? And we have to listen to these things. We have to answer them because they're not from within us. They are an absolute gift, aren't they?
Like when these, I call it like a crack in consciousness, when this, and sometimes, when we're very attuned, we will just have this flow, our channel is open. So we have this continual dialogue, with this wisdom, with this energy, with these insights. But at that stage in my life, I was so, and this is what happens when we're very in our masculine, we can be in a very protective energy.
Yes.
And that protection that we put over ourselves, because we're so busy and we're so exhausted and we're putting out so much that we have to protect the little of what's left in some way. We protect, we have this protection over our heart. We have this protection over ourselves, and it stops the energy from getting in. So very often those times, it really is a crisis or a dark moment. What I hadn't shared is that it was a Wednesday evening. I know you know this story, but for your listeners, some may resonate with this. You know, it was a Wednesday evening. I had gotten home late again. My little girl, she was about 2 or so at the time, and she had asked for a bedtime story, and it was a Wednesday night, and it was the third night in a row she'd asked me for a bedtime story, and I'd said, just cozy down, just we'll do bedtime story tomorrow. Mommy loves you, just cozy down, because I was so exhausted, and all I wanted to do was flop on my bed. I just wanted to just switch off from the day and just lie down because I was so tired. And that voice, it was really guilt, you know, that feeling of that misalignment. Like if your life is in such a way that you just can't do that simple act.
Yeah.
It's not about reading a bedtime story, but it's just that's what was meaningful to me. You know, that's what felt meaningful to me, to have that beautiful time. And actually what the voice says, what the voice opened up with was, you're lying. You're not going to read the story tomorrow, because tomorrow you're going to do the same thing again, and you're going to come home and you're going to be exhausted. So why are you doing what you're doing?
Incredible. Good for you for listening. Thank goodness you listened, because look at what you're offering now. And you will be telling bedtime stories. And I know you tell bedtime stories, go for bike rides, you're so connected, you're there when your daughter comes home. That means so much nowadays. Well, it always has. But I think we sort of lost our way a little bit with the importance of being successful in a corporate world. I know that for me, it took, because for me, it took actual illness to stop leaving here on a Monday morning in a red eye and coming home on a Thursday night on the last flight, at a time when I actually didn't need to do it anymore. And I ended up with labyrinthinitis that literally, so the universe literally knocked me down, made me so dizzy I couldn't stand up, actually put me in a dark room because I couldn't even look at a device, a TV or anything, and made me look at my life. And I had so many realizations, like you, the voice came in. But sometimes you just, so I was past my children being little, but they were past going through university and things, which was always my reason for, no, it's okay, I'll get them through university, then I'll slow down, then I can come home and be home all the time. They were, and they had been. And and it was like, 3 months later, I was in early retirement and I was home, and it was like, I didn't actually go back to work after that. And I was ill, and I couldn't actually even drive a car for a while. But the universe tells you, my God, does it tell you? We just have to listen.
Yeah. And I think there's a really important piece to this as well, that like we on this journey, and this is a really important distinction that I really want to make, like we have to hold ourselves with so much compassion.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, all of the intentions, regardless of how we're acting, all of the intentions are coming from what we think is best at that time.
Absolutely.
We're trying to provide, we're trying to get success, we're trying to create opportunity, we're trying to, we're mostly, the majority of us are just people who are out there trying our very best.
Exactly. Everyone is. Everyone is. And that is the sad thing. That is the sad thing. So how do we get past that?
Well, I think that being open, I think it starts with being open to that exploration. I really do think it starts with being open to that exploration. Often I always feel truth comes when you're ready. Like I feel it's just, when you hear me talk about desires and, until the end of time, but I really feel with things like our desires, and you could, let's just call it truth, right? So whether we're thinking about desires or questions that we might have about life, whatever way we think about this, let's just call the energy truth. I believe that it can only come when we're open and ready to do something with it. If internally it just doesn't feel safe on some level, then we won't be fully open and ready to receive it. So I believed at that time, when that crack in consciousness really came through for me with Ivy, it was just at a time when I was ready to hear it and really do something about it.
Yeah.
I believe you can accelerate that receptivity by getting curious. Why am I doing the things that I'm doing?
Yes.
Questions that I had to sit with was things like, why do I meet people that I don't overly enjoy the experience of that?
Yeah.
Right? In a practical note, things like, why do I meet friends and go out for these drinks and go to places and drink, and I actually don't enjoy that?
Yeah.
And I was this standing joke of my friends, because they would say, Darrell will come, and I would, be all the life and energy, and we would get to this place with Johnny Fox's, and they would go in to get their drink, and I would pretend to go to the loo, go and just go straight back out the door and go to my taxi and go home, because
I used to do that.
yeah, because but I used to think to myself, but why do you do it? And so it starts to open up. When you go down this avenue of curiosity, why, for me, it opened up questions in my relationship. Why do you behave the way that you behave? Why do you always need to be right? What do you get out of always being right? So I started to really question myself and my choices. And even though you might not have all of the answers, I think what I would say is that awareness in and of itself, that we, to explore our choices, and that we may be doing things that are not actually helping us, just to begin to explore that, the awareness of it itself can create the opportunities for, like, the earth angels who come and say, here's something that I think would just be great for you, or somebody who just happens to land in your inbox, or like a mentor or a teacher. I really believe that when if you're a person who's receptive, in other words, you're just with genuine curiosity and compassion, exploring your choices, exploring the way that you would truly like to live, I believe that those mentors, people, opportunities, experiences will be placed in front of you. And in that, new timelines will be born.
I completely agree with you. And that is the way, absolutely the way it happens. And there's no coincidence in it. People appear in your life when they're supposed to, when you need them, because we do need people and connection and help. And and it's amazing. And it's like joining the dots as well, before you actually realize this and grab the opportunity, because it's the right one, because it's been placed in front of you. But joining the dots when you look back, as you said, it's I joined the dots to when I met you, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I hadn't. So and you came along just at the right time, but I certainly didn't come to work with you. It was, first of all, one-to-one as a business coach to help me with my boutique, because it was floundering. But the boutique wasn't what it was all about.
I think on some level, thinking about this yet, I just think on some deep level, below our awareness, we actually do, well, of course we do know, our soul, the higher aspect of us does know. It knew that there was this beautiful purpose just, waiting to be unleashed and shared with the world, waiting to be to come through you and to be shared with the world. And I believe that we'll just, if we listen to the nudges, even though it doesn't make sense, like you said, you came because it felt like, well, I'll just get some coaching because this isn't really working, so that's logical. And then obviously, we started to open up this energy within you, which is what really happened, this beautiful incredible energy within you, that you you know, and I spoke about that importance of that fluidity, that you had the courage to just open up and allow that process, you know, it came down, the awareness, and just take it out into the world and be so brave and be a woman. One of the things I was talking about with my clients today, be a woman who's really in the arena. You know, that the Brene Brown quote, daring greatly.
Daring greatly. I love daring greatly. But you encouraged me to. And look at your life now. So my goodness, that if you hadn't left, if you hadn't gone, I quit that day. My goodness, so many people wouldn't have had, so, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people would not have had the privilege, and it is a privilege, of meeting you and coming within your energy and you changing lives, and it's energetic. Your energy is phenomenal, and it's, you know, when I think about what does Darrell do, I do, you know, so in my mind it's absolute magical, but mystical, but real energetics. You just, you know, I know that when we stop this recording today, I'll go and do what I've been saying that I'm going to do properly, and get my Instagram absolutely up and running with what we've talked about before, because I've been putting it off a bit, mainly because I've been recording this podcast. So that's another good thing. But you are a catalyzer. You are the catalyst.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. And I think what I was reflecting on last night when I thought about that little sequence of events that I was sharing today, from, you know, going from this nurse, I loved my job, I appreciated what I did, I felt like I was living my purpose, I was doing my best for my family, I was doing the best that I knew, but it was like I got to follow the breadcrumbs even when it didn't make sense, even when I felt like I was having a soul ego death of embarrassment and humiliation. I think that's another part that I would, you know, share as well, that often in that journey to get to where we're truly meant for, we will have to face the parts of ourselves that we most fear. And for me, the idea of embarrassing myself or, you know, humiliating myself, I think this is an energy we all wrestle with, because perfectionism and just be, you know, this is as women, this is how we have been conditioned to be, like this idea of perfectionism and not putting, you know, being flawless and, you know, to look the certain way, and then you know, have the house a certain way and the children a certain way, and then, you know, coming into, you know, probably from your generation, because I know, and my mum was the same, like then also the career and working, and it's like things were never like this before. You know, it was, but we've placed, or more importantly, society has placed all of these layers of expectation and this, you know, I think expectation onto women, which has really, I think, cut us off from our essence.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolute conditioning.
Yes.
Which on one hand, it's made to look like success.
Right.
But on the other hand, keeps us so small and in a box. And that is where society wants us to be.
Yes.
Well,
but
that.
Yes,
you know?
It's so true. The box out of that conditioning will require us to meet the things that we have been programmed to be fearful of. And those things are failure, you know, not getting it right, mixing up your words, you know, like any of these silly things, you know, public speaking. These are the things that we've been taught to be afraid of, not fully using our voice, not fully being who we are. And the true, I believe, path to, you know, meaning in life and fulfillment and purpose, you know, is to truly face those fears and realize they are like clouds. A plane wouldn't, you know, drive toward a cloud and go, oh, there's a big blocking my way. I better like divert. The plane knows, and I just go through. And that's what your fears are like. This, you know, this idea of embarrassment or failure, they are just experiences that you will go through and that you will transcend, and you will come out of the other end knowing yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. And those are Patanjali's words, not mine, but I always come back to them because that's what this journey is. Continuing to meet yourself, meet these new, expansive, enlightened, illuminated parts of yourself that will, you know, bring unto you the people, the opportunities, the experiences that really will bring you into a new timeline, a new level of being, a new state of being, that you really will look back, as I'm sure you do, and go, what just happened? That is incredible, you know?
Exactly. And that is the essence. That's the essence. It's the secret, if you like.
It is.
It's, yeah. And you embody it. And we have to live it.
Yeah.
So, Darrell, I can only thank you so, so much from the bottom of my heart. I will put a link to your website and to your Instagram in the description of the podcast. So please go along and follow this wonderful woman. And I love you. And thank you so very much.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.